I was hungry and tired after a long day at work. I decided to stop by the Subway restaurant near my apartment for a quick bite. It was late at night and the place was almost empty. There was only one other customer, a young woman who looked nervous and pale. She was sitting at a corner table, clutching her sandwich as if it was her lifeline. I ordered a turkey and cheese sub from the cashier, who seemed bored and distracted. He barely looked at me as he took my money and handed me my receipt. He told me to wait for my order at the end of the counter. I nodded and walked over to the soda fountain. I filled my cup with ice and cola, then turned around to look for a seat. That's when I saw him. He was standing behind the counter wearing a Subway uniform and a plastic glove. He had a large knife in his hand, and he was slicing something on a cutting board, something red and bloody, something that looked like human flesh. He looked up and met my gaze. He smiled, revealing yellow teeth stained with blood. He winked at me and said, "Your sub is almost ready, sir." I felt a surge of fear and disgust. I dropped my cup and ran towards the exit. I heard him laugh behind me, a sickening sound that chilled my bones. I reached for the door handle, but it was locked. I pulled and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. I turned around and saw him coming towards me, still holding the knife. He had a twisted grin on his face, and he said, "Don't worry, sir. You'll love our special sauce." I screamed and backed away from him, looking for a way out. I saw the young woman still sitting at her table, staring at me with wide eyes. She looked terrified, but she didn't move or say anything. She just watched as he approached me. He reached me and grabbed me by the collar. He lifted me off the ground and threw me on the counter. He pinned me down with his weight and raised his knife above his head. He said, "Welcome to Subway, sir. Eat fresh." He brought the knife down towards my chest. I woke up with a start, sweating and panting. It was all a nightmare, a horrible nightmare. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. It was 3:15 a.m. I got up and went to the bathroom. I splashed some water on my face and tried to calm down. I told myself it was just a dream. But then I noticed something on my arm. A bite mark. A bloody bite mark. And I remembered. The young woman. She wasn't just watching. She was eating. Eating her sandwich. Eating me. I was hanging out with my friends at the Subway restaurant near our college. We had just finished our exams and wanted to celebrate with some sandwiches and cookies. We were having a good time, laughing and chatting until we noticed something strange. The restaurant was unusually empty for a Friday night. There were only a few customers and staff, and they all looked nervous and pale. The lights were flickering and the music was distorted. We felt a chill in the air, as if something was wrong. We decided to finish our food quickly and leave. But before we could do that, we heard a loud scream from the kitchen. We turned around and saw a horrifying sight. A man in a bloody apron was holding a knife and chasing a terrified employee. He had a crazed look in his eyes and a twisted smile on his face. He shouted, "I'm hungry. I need more meat. You're all my meat." We were frozen in fear, unable to move or speak. The man stabbed the employee in the chest and dragged him to the counter. He threw him on the cutting board and started slicing him like a sandwich. Blood splattered everywhere, staining the walls and the floor. He looked at us and said, "Don't worry. I have enough for everyone. You're next." He grabbed another knife and ran towards us. We snapped out of our shock and ran for the door. We pushed past the other customers and staff, who were also trying to escape. We heard more screams and thuds behind us. We reached the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. We banged on it, hoping someone outside would hear us, but no one came. We looked out the window and saw that it was dark outside. The street was deserted. There were no cars or people. It was as if the world had ended. We realized we were trapped in the Subway restaurant with a madman who wanted to kill us and eat us. We turned around and saw him standing there, holding 2 knives and grinning wickedly. He said, "There's no way out. You're all mine." He lunged at us, ready to slash us to pieces. We screamed. I was hungry and tired after a long day at work. I decided to stop by the Subway restaurant near my apartment for a quick bite. It was late at night, and the streets were deserted. The only sign of life was the neon sign of the Subway logo, flickering in the dark. I entered the restaurant and saw a young man behind the counter. He looked bored and annoyed, as if he wanted to go home. He barely glanced at me as I approached him. "Hi, can I have a foot-long turkey and cheese on wheat bread, please?" I asked politely. He nodded and started to make my sandwich. He didn't say anything, just sliced the bread, added the meat and cheese, and put it in the oven. He seemed to be in a hurry, as if he wanted to get rid of me as soon as possible. I waited patiently, looking around the restaurant. It was empty and quiet, except for the humming of the oven and the soft music playing from the speakers. The walls were decorated with posters of different sandwiches and salads, along with some motivational quotes and slogans. One of them caught my eye. "I eat fresh. Live healthy." I smiled ironically, thinking how ironic it was to eat a processed sandwich in a fast food chain and call it healthy. I wondered how fresh the ingredients really were, and how many calories and additives they contained. The oven beeped, signaling that my sandwich was ready. The young man took it out and wrapped it in paper. He then added some lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and mayo, and closed the sandwich. "That'll be $6.99, he said in a monotone voice. I handed him a $10 bill and waited for my change. He opened the cash register and gave me $3. "Thanks," I said, taking my sandwich and change. He nodded and turned away, without saying anything else. I walked to the door feeling a bit uneasy. Something about his attitude bothered me. He seemed so cold and distant, as if he didn't care about anything or anyone. Maybe he was having a bad day, or maybe he hated his job, or maybe he was hiding something. I shook my head, dismissing my paranoid thoughts. He was probably just tired and bored, like most people who work in minimum wage jobs. I shouldn't judge him or make assumptions about him. I opened the door and stepped outside. The night air was chilly and crisp, and I shivered slightly. I wrapped my jacket around me and started to walk towards my apartment. I took a bite of my sandwich, expecting to taste the familiar flavor of turkey and cheese. But instead, I tasted something else. Something metallic. Something salty. Something bloody. I spat out the bite, feeling nauseous. I looked at my sandwich, horrified by what I saw. There was no turkey or cheese in it. There was only flesh. Human flesh. I screamed, dropping the sandwich on the ground. I felt bile rising in my throat, and I vomited on the sidewalk. I looked up, hoping to see someone who could help me or explain what was happening, but there was no one around. No one except him. The young man from the Subway restaurant. He was standing at the door, holding a large knife in his hand. He was smiling wickedly, showing his stained teeth. He had blood on his face. He had blood on his apron. He had blood on his hands. He spoke in a raspy voice that chilled me to the bone. "Did you enjoy your sandwich?" He laughed maniacally as he started to walk towards me. I turned around and ran for my life.